Hey everyone, I'm Clayfect, and today I feel artsy. I feel like pondering over stuff. That is why I am going to take you along for the journey while we are sculpting Gertrud and Cornelius. I am going to tell you a lot more about this sculpture and my thoughts behind sculpting it, while we explore the subject of being strong, what it means to have true strength, and what kind of strengths there are. It sounds heavy, but we are going to make it fun, so without further ado, let's get started. And we are going to start with Gertrud, making her a skeleton out of wire. Now, as you saw, Gertrud is a rhinoceros. God, that's a word I don't feel like saying much. Is it just me, or does English have a tendency to make animal names sound overly fancy? If we translate directly rhinoceros over to Danish, we are calling it a næsehorn, which means nose horn. It's simple, it makes sense. The same with animal names like platypus, come on. That is just meant to be difficult for anyone who doesn't have English as a first language. In Denmark, it's called a næbdyr, which means big animal. It's simple. So please, English-speaking people, please explain to me, is it just because you don't want us in your fancy club? Or are we oversimplifying the words? Maybe it's just a Danish thing, come to think about it. Anyway, let's get back to the sculpture, where we built up her bottom, so to speak, before we gave her some legs. Now, the reason I chose to make a rhinoceros when I think of strength, it's not only because I think the rhinoceros is a formidable animal that can weigh from 1.5 tons to 3.5 tons. That's like 30 scooters. So we can definitely say that the rhinoceros have some weight behind it. And that's not all. They can run up to 50 kilometers an hour. That's faster than a scooter. So yeah, I thought the rhinoceros was a good place to start when I wanted to explore what it means to be strong. I mean, their horn can grow up to be 1.5 meters. And is pure chitin, the same stuff our nails are made of. It's quite incredible, really. But even though they have thick skin and as much muscle, so even Arnold Schwarzenegger will go, "Whoa, take it easy, bro," if he saw them in a gym. Is it really enough to be true strong? Shouldn't there be more than just muscle? Now you can think of that for a little bit while I'm sculpting the feet. Now, I used way too long on the feet. I don't know why they fascinated me so, but they did. And it was fun. I really had fun with this sculpture. From the feet to the skin of the legs, I used a lot of reference photos because I wanted to be as realistic as possible while also keeping my kind of style. I wanted to show the softer side because even though the rhinoceros is a formidable animal, don't get me wrong, they also have terrible sight and they do have sort of an ill temper, don't they? And Gertrud is no different. She is stubborn and love to explore and being brave, but sometimes, like everyone else, she finds herself in over her head, so to speak. And that is the scene I want to create. I want this little rhinoceros baby to be sitting out in the rain, waiting for her mom to come. Because no matter how strong you are, no matter how big you are, no matter how old you are, at some points in your life you are still going to need people. You are going to need help. And that is also a sign of strength. To me, at least. Being able to acknowledge that fact and react to it is hard, in my opinion. and is something that really takes a lot of strength. So I really feel like we need to dig deeper in order to see what it does mean to be truly strong. Now I'm almost done with the front legs and are about to texture our little Gertrud. When it came to texturing the skin, I took a very laid back approach, you can say. I just took whatever scraping tool I felt like and scraped in whatever direction makes sense to me. And I don't know why, but it seemed to work. I think it looked great. But with her front legs done, I could get working on her upper body, giving it some folds and some texture, before our little Gertrud finally could go in for her first bake and we could get started working on her head. Now I sculpted the head a bit different than what I usually do. Normally I am building up the head and then I use a ball stylus to poke in some eye sockets and then I place the eyes. This time I took it a bit slower. First making a ball out of aluminium, then put some clay on to make this head base. And when I was finally happy with that shape, that is when I placed the eyes, and then I put a sheet of clay around the eyes so I could sort of push the eyelid to the eye, making it look more natural. And I have to say, even though there's a bit more steps to this technique, I think Gertrud came out super great. Even though she does look like a derpy dinosaur before I place the clay around her eyes. And when I'm placing the clay, she does look like an angry dinosaur, but trust me, as you saw in the intro, she is going to look like somewhat of a rhinoceros when we are done. My idea for Gertrud's head was to place an ant on top of it holding a leaf. In this futile attempt to shield her from the rain, and that is when Cornelius came into play. Because trying to do the right thing against all odds must be a sign of strength, right? And even if that isn't a sign of strength, an ant can actually carry up to 50 times its own body weight. So putting Cornelius on top of Gertrud's head should really emphasize the aspect of strength I'm going for with this sculpture. And I really do feel like the sculpture is going to show strength, but in a whole different way than what I expected it to do. But I am going to tell you more about that later. Right now, however, we are a little over halfway through, which means it's about time for me yet again to say that like, commenting and subscribing is a possibility if you like what I do. It really makes a difference for this channel and for me. And I am so grateful for every one of my Clayfuls who have done just that. Thank ya. But with that, let's get back to the sculpture where you could see I had some problems placing the head. However, it was nothing a little bit of aluminium foil and clay couldn't fix. Now, if you want any tips and tricks from me when it comes to showing feelings to animal sculptures, I will say that body language is one of the most important parts. That is why I am having Gertrud looking slightly upwards in sort of defiance and wonder over that Wayne actually managed to hit her, even though she's not a particular fan of Wayne hitting her. Like it's a marvel to her that something, anything in this world openly can defy her like that. But with her in the oven yet again, it was time for Cornelius. And I had my problems. I wanted to make him as tiny as possible, and I'm sorry if my camera is struggling to capture it, but I was struggling in creating him. Maybe the true sign of strength is my willingness to torture myself with these small details. However, I will not this time go on a rant on how difficult it was to make Cornelius. You can see for yourself the trials I had to endure, but I have to say, I am so happy with both Cornelius and Gertrud. I think they came out super great. So now I just needed to bring them to life using some colors. And it was here my nightmare began. It started pretty innocently with me using a dark gray wash to get into all the crevices and hopefully give it some dimension and shadows before I went into dry brushing with a light gray, and then a darker gray, and then a brown gray, and then again dry brushing with yet another type of gray before I forgot all about dry brushing and instead switch over to a couple of washes, all in hope of making it look sort of natural and a decent paint job. But I was colorblind and I can't see any difference no matter how I tried to paint it. I even used finger painting, for crying out loud, at some points. And that is when I had to accept that Gertrud's color is going to remain a mystery to me, and I switch over to paint some details. I was relieved when it was finally time to paint the leaf and Cornelius, because that was simple. That was colors I actually could see a difference in. So this time you have to be the judge if I did a good paint job, because I literally have no idea. However, I do think the color struggle did help me in painting Cornelius, because it was so tiny and still I was relieved that it wasn't gray. You know what? I actually think that gray is my least favorite color to paint with. So don't ask me why I've made so many gray sculptures. Let's just move on to the resin. That really helped bring this sculpture together, in my opinion, and made a vast difference. I just love the water drop on the leaves and the small drops I managed to put on the face and the side of Gertrud. I really think it helped bring this sculpture to life. And with the resin done, I think that is it for this sculpture and it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Now in this sculpting process, I came to two conclusions when we are talking about strength. My pessimistic side saw the sculpture finish and thought, well, it doesn't matter what kind of strong you are or how strong you are, you're still going to get wet anyway, so what's the point? But my Disney-loving, child frolicking side saw something completely different, and that is true strength is being able to show and accept your own vulnerability and to be able to stand together throughout it all. I have no doubt in my mind that Gertrud and Cornelius are the best of friends. I picture Cornelius always following Gertrud around trying to protect her. But I do feel like Cornelius would have helped Gertrud even if he didn't know her in the capacity he was able to. And that, my friends, is compassion and the true strength, in my opinion. So yeah, this is the strongest sculpture I have ever made. But with that, guys, at last, unfortunately, it is time for me to sign off. I hope to see you next time, but if you can wait until next time, why not click on the square to the right, where you can see Hope the Hippo Get Made. A very old but also very funny video if you want to see a slightly younger Clayfect. But as we would say here in Denmark, hold da munter!